Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With episode 592 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Thursday, so you know exactly what that means. We are here to break down everything that happened over the last week across NXT and AEW. NXT just coming off that 2-week special NXT Spring Breakin', building toward NXT Battleground at the beginning of June, about 1 month away. Meanwhile, you have AEW forging ahead on the road to AEW Double or Nothing, emanating from Las Vegas, actually, both shows, now that I think about it, emanating from Las Vegas. We have an absolute ton to get to on today's show, as we always seem to here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. So allow me to kick it off with a reminder that this show
is all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave those 5-star ratings on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. It is also where you can send in tweets and DMs, questions, comments, whatever the hell you want to say for the show. We will do our best, of course, to read them on the air. And please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
And I hope you do as well, because for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to Raw, NXT, Dynamite, and SmackDown every week, along with exclusive news posts on Friday. Again, you can get all of that at buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Now, we have a lot to talk about today. I said loaded show at the top. It's actually not true. This is one of our least busy episodes of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast we have had in quite some time. There's still plenty to talk about, which is why I call it a loaded show. But in terms of hours of TV, we're talking about 4 on this episode, not the normal 7. Why is that? Because AEW, due to the NBA and I assume NHL playoffs as well, they only put out Dynamite this past week. We already discussed the Rampage on last week's episode when we did 2 Rampages, a Collision, and a Dynamite all together. So that provides us a little extra time to vamp, have some fun here, but we're not going to drag it into a long episode. Why? Because things have been crazy here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. We have been putting out a ton of performance-enhancing audios for your ear holes as of late, and this is our first normal week in quite some time. So still coming on today's show, we're going to break down NXT, we're going to break down AEW Dynamite.
But I'm afraid I've got some news.
So NXT released about 2 handfuls of talent last week, most notable among them, Drew Gulak and Gable Steveson. Now, we already spoke about Gulak on Tuesday's WWE show, but to dig in deeper, it appears as if he was problematic, and I might even say dangerous as a trainer, beyond the recent controversy with Ronda Rousey, which makes me wonder how the hell he was there so long and why they had not cut ties with him long ago, especially given that he was reportedly warned at least one time. Gulak has never been a significant ad on screen, and though I did think No Quarter Catch Crew was fine in concept, it's basically the same group without him, and with him gone, it actually gives Charlie Dempsey an opportunity to step up as the leader and the star of the trio, so it's almost like an addition by subtraction situation when it comes to Gulak. Regarding Steveson, we mentioned his release Tuesday. We held off discussing it further because he was supposed to have an exclusive interview with Ariel Helwani on Wednesday. That never happened. Instead, his agent sent a letter to Ariel basically saying it didn't work out in WWE. Gable is already training for MMA. He's had numerous inquiries from NFL teams, and he still has a year of collegiate eligibility remaining. So it kind of sounds like he's going to go and try to win a 3rd NCAA championship, heavyweight championship, then maybe try out for the NFL, and then probably wind up doing MMA. But as we've mentioned before, this was another good riddance situation with this guy. It was never going to work. Certainly the fact that WWE brought him on in the first place was problematic, but then you saw that he just completely lacked charisma. His in-ring skill did not make up for it. And you just wonder how a guy who showed that much personality in collegiate wrestling just could not translate any of it over to WWE. And you also wonder, all those opportunities they had sitting down with him, talking, signing him to the NIL deal, watching him progress. How did they not notice this sooner before they tried to put him on TV and make it work? What's amazing is that Gable's brother, who's Damon Kemp in WWE, is actually super talented and he's been doing a great job. So he may have a decent career in WWE, whereas the more talented, from a collegiate wrestling standpoint, brother is obviously not going to. Now, the other releases in this group were erroneously called NXT talent when the vast majority of them were actually performance center trainees. The two exceptions were Trey Bearhill, who made limited TV appearances and unimpressed when he did, and then Valentina Feroz, who had that really fun tag team, you'll remember, with Yulisa Leon before injuries and other issues kind of threw wrenches into their push. There were a couple notable folks from the WWE Next Gen show, the one that aired on Roku, but I have not even gotten a chance to see that show, even though I badly want to. So I can't necessarily comment on those who got released, if there's significant losses, if it's a surprise or anything like that. But this is what WWE had said they were going to do. Evaluate PC talent every 6 months or so, and then trim the roster so that they have space to bring in more prospective talent. And if you're not cutting it after 6 months, a year, whatever the case might be, then the truth is WWE is not going to waste their time on you. And this is not that dissimilar from any other professional sports league. There are people who get churned out from the bottom of the talent roster every single year. There's a ton of people who get drafted and don't make teams. There's a ton of undrafted free agents who do make teams. It's just how the cycle goes, unfortunately. And WWE being the leader in the industry, they're not going to be able to keep and employ everyone forever. Now, you can make arguments about the independent contractor status and a lot of the other things that WWE does. I'm just saying from a numbers standpoint, it obviously makes sense that some people get rotated out every year. And given we already had the main roster releases and now this group of NXT/PC releases, it certainly has not been a bloodletting like we've seen recently. And that certainly is a step in the right direction. One more somewhat of a news item, I guess, before we continue. During a taping after AEW Dynamite on Wednesday, a member of the crowd apparently harassed Sky Blue in like a significant manner and got thrown out of the arena. Obviously, it was a guy. Unfortunately, shit like this is far too common in wrestling. At least the shithead in this case got dealt with, but there are just some common decency mindsets that people need to hold when they go to really any public event, but especially like a wrestling show. It's really twofold at this point. One, wash yourself and use deodorant. And two, don't harass the female talent. It shouldn't really be that hard to be respectful and appreciate the work that these performers are putting on for us. I don't think the people listening to this podcast need to be reminded of that. But given this made some pretty decent news Wednesday going into Thursday, I would, of course, figured I'd mention it on the show. And really, that's about it for this week, unless you want me to get into another Tony Khan interview where he gets into more AEW versus WWE stuff. It was really nothing that explosive. It was far more boring and repetitive than anything else, talking about how the promos in AEW are better than WWE because they're not scripted. I mean, that shit played, a year ago even, but multiple years ago, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, definitely. Shit's changing now. I don't think that Tony continuing down this path of we're the challenger brand, WWE is big and bad and evil, I don't think that's going to work anymore. When you're a 5-year-old company and you're doing really well and you're selling a shit ton of pay-per-views and you're going to get a new TV deal, I really think AEW almost needs to insulate itself for like 2 years. Like, just do the best that you can do and stop worrying about WWE. If someone goes on an interview or a podcast or whatever and says something and takes a shot, let it roll off your back. I know that's tough to do, especially when you are legitimately the challenger brand, but I don't think this should be the conversation for AEW anymore. It only hurts them. It doesn't help them when you're saying, we are the number 2 and number 1 is big, bad, and evil. Well, guess what, folks? A lot of people think the NFL is evil. That doesn't mean all of a sudden the AFL was going to work. It didn't mean that the spring leagues were going to overtake the NFL. It's not going to happen like that. The NBA, people think the NBA is evil. You start up a basketball league, a secondary league. It's not going to overtake the NBA just because you say the NBA is evil. So I just think that Tony and AEW, they need to rethink this strategy, get a little bit more insulated, and just focus on being the best they possibly can. Regarding ratings, we are taping well before the Dynamite number comes out on Thursday. What I will note is NXT rebounded massively from last week, which again, last week was against a ton of competition, but it was still a rough number, as I pointed out. So that was at least a positive for NXT. And you know what? That is where we're going to start today's show, breaking down everything that happened in NXT. We will do the exact same for everything that happened on AEW Dynamite from Wednesday night. As always, there will be timestamps in the episode description. So if you only want to listen to me break down one brand or the other, you have that opportunity. But I do hope you listen to the entire show as it is presented. Let's start, as noted, with NXT. The Women's Championship was on the line. Roxanne Perez defending against Chelsea Green. Roxanne was wearing Io Sky's black pants from back in the day upon entering NXT.
Gonna look good, but she's got me saying, hey now!
I'm not saying they're the same pants. I'm saying they're the same vibes. Later backstage, we got exactly what we wanted last week. Ariana Grace and Chelsea together in the same segment. Ariana put Chelsea over, and Green said Grace is almost as perfect as her. They giggled and made plans together with Gigi Dolan stuck between them. Gigi stormed off, saying she was done with all of this, but this was freaking excellent. So much Iconics energy between these two. I would love it if Chelsea and Ariana had a long-term relationship. Maybe Chelsea was her mentor, like a big sister, little sister type of gimmick where they always have each other's back, whether it's Chelsea going down to NXT or Ariana coming up to the main roster. I would love for them to do something like that. I think it would be huge, and both of them would get immensely popular working together. Even later backstage, Roxy was uber confident, saying she would send Chelsea packing and that no one likes her. Then, yes, even later backstage, Chelsea was making her walk to the ring when she saw Robert Stone all dressed up in a sharp, dark suit with a shiny necklace, giving her a wink and a nod. So clearly, it seems like they may actually put them together. Hopefully, he gets the main roster call-up and he gets to manage her and Piper Niven, at least initially. I'm not sure why, but Chelsea came across a bit more polished overall looks-wise coming into this match. Maybe it was just the choice of gear and clothing, but there was something about her that just seemed more polished. Roxy also had great new gray extensions in her hair, just made her look really cool. Chelsea patted Roxy's head while she was on the top rope, only to get smacked across the face. So Green slid under the ropes, tripped her, and gave her a receipt. Chelsea hit a running Rough Rider and a basement flatliner. Perez came back with a basement dropkick and a Hurricanrana off the ropes. Chelsea had two really odd moves in a row, a German suplex that was more of a toss, and then half of a missile dropkick. They each avoided finishers and pinning combinations, only for Roxy to hit Pop Rocks coming off the ropes to retain the title in 10 minutes. Now, the match did kind of fall apart over the final 60 seconds, but the first 9 minutes were really strong, and it was great to see Chelsea given a chance to actually wrestle a full match as a singles competitor and not just get squashed. There's no reason she cannot regularly get 7 to 8 minute matches on the main roster. It will only get her over more. Hopefully that will now happen because she's over on SmackDown and has the chance to get featured beyond what she was doing in the tag team division, stuck on Raw, which was loaded with women's talent. Unlike prior weeks, this was not a quality wrestling edition of NXT. I would say this was the second best match on the show, but I mean, at best, it was a 3-star match. It wasn't anything special. What I did want to play for you was a quick post-show clip between Chelsea and Ariana. It's 41 seconds. It's not that long, but it just helps kind of hone in on why I want them to work together so badly.
You did so good.
No, you did so good.
You think so?
You're so pretty.
You're so pretty.
We're both so pretty. We're so pretty. And we're so good. And we're winners.
We won.
Winner.
They cheated. It's not fair.
But you know what? We're rich. And we're sparkly. And everybody loves us.
And better than most people, I think.
That line from Ariana, and we're better than most people, I think, pops me. I think that's so freaking funny. They are awesome together. Just wanted to reiterate that. She lost her match on the show. That's why they were able to do it, but we'll talk about her a little bit later. Michin fought Grace. This is the match that we're talking about. I didn't realize it was right next on my list. Michin had some really weird ring gear. It almost looked like she was wearing pieces from two different sets together. She broke an armbar with a deadlift powerbomb. Grace was caught cheating during a pinfall, and Michin eventually won with eat defeat. It was her first singles victory on television, other than main event, in 16 months. That's insane, because Mia Yim Michin is talented and she deserves more opportunity. So I'm glad she at least got this victory. Nothing else really to discuss here. Trick Williams guested on Supernova Sessions with Lash Legend, making a huge deal of his appearance. Trick said he was only there to see what was in the envelope. So Lash unveiled a picture of Noam Dar's foot under the bottom rope when Williams pinned him a couple weeks ago. Dar said that means the title reign is built on a lie and he's going to expose him. Trick was all of us thinking like, what the F is this shit? Given it was a really crappy reveal. Williams made some more comments and asked if Legend wanted to tell her crew. She called him baby by accident, and he was about to get her to break and tell Metaphor everything when Noam caught him blind with a forearm and knocked Trick out cold, and then he held up the title himself. So, look, this was absolutely terrible to start, but it did turn on a dime with the tease of revealing a Trick-Lash relationship on screen. No enthusiasm here for a Williams-Dar feud, but if you want someone to give Trick a great match in his first title defense, there's probably few better options in NXT right now than Noam Dar. I just hope this happens on TV with someone else stepping up for Battleground, because I really do not see this match carrying a premium live event. So while it started ice cold, I would say it ended pretty hot. Later in the NXT parking lot, Javon Evans confronted Metaphor, sans Lash, but the heels just talked over him, and it seems like a challenge for that is going to come next week. And obviously the question is, where was Lash? The assumption is with Trick. So we'll find out more. And also there was a good part I did miss. Williams called himself Trick Willy Wonka, and that popped Lash and popped the crowd. And that was a pretty fun moment as part of this. Now, NXT actually opened with a legitimately exceptional video package about Wes Lee's injury and his recovery. And as he watched it with all the baby faces backstage, he got teary-eyed saying he missed this before walking out to the ring. It was great, and it was legitimately emotional to start the show. So we had Wes against Josh Briggs. Wes ran Briggs into the post, then did a Hurricanrana hanging onto it, which I can't really remember seeing before. Briggs countered the cardiac kick with a catch backbreaker as Ivar walked out staring him down. Wes dropkicked Briggs into Ivar on commentary, then hit a corkscrew for the 1-2-3 to pick up his first victory since returning. Then he celebrated with the fans as Briggs and Ivar brawled, so he decided to take them out with a flying senton as Obafemi watched from the crow's nest, just laughing at all of them. This was a really dumb babyface tactic to get involved in a fight that had nothing to do with him, but it was a good looking spot. Wes was mostly his normal self. It was not a great match in terms of the styles with him and Briggs. It felt like they clashed and didn't really work that smoothly together. It was still a solid win, and it was the best match on NXT Tuesday. But really the highlight of this opening segment, and I would say one of the highlights of the entire show, was that Wes Lee video package that opened up NXT. Carmen Petrovic fought Shayna Baszler. Natalya and Lola Vice were both ringside. Baszler bent Petrovic's arm through the bottom bar of the ring apron and kicked it. Really inventive spot. And then she kept working it. Carmen got in some nice kicks, but Shayna caught her flying into a Karafuda clutch for the submission victory. Carmen continues to flash from the standpoint of her having a unique style that stands out. She's still immensely green, though. In a funny bit after the bell, Lola did her ass and hip shaking routine next to Baszler, who just wanted nothing to do with it and walked away from her. Carmen later apologized for letting Natty down, only to get advice about finding your edge and being aggressive. A dude came up telling Natty the NXT Underground match was sick, and then another dude came up and called Petrovic a smoke show. So she roundhouse kicked him in the face. I know this is an ongoing NXT storyline, but look, if Shayna was wrestling on this show anyway, I don't see why WWE could not have held the Queen of the Ring match against Zelina Vega here and moved this to next week. Would have given fans even more reason to tune into NXT. King of the Ring continues on NXT. And by the way, had they done that with Rey and Kofi Kingston, then you're putting two big stars on the show and you're giving people even more reason to tune into NXT. Also notable was Petrovic had a graphic added to her entrance, and the backstage segment with her and Natty was pretty interesting. I wonder if this is going to be the start of some kind of gimmick for them or storyline trajectory, if Natty's going to spend more time down there. I like Natty in NXT, and she gets a great response, so I do hope that is the case. Kalani Jordan backstage was complaining about Fallon Henley's attack last week, saying she's not a real friend, and she wanted to smack her in the combine that was held on Monday. Fallon popped in all sarcastic, saying she's sick of the whole friendship gambit, and now Fallon comes first. and she's focused on becoming the first women's North American champion. That's her new catchphrase. They started arguing only to get pulled apart by some other random women. That led to a match, Kalani and Fallon. Jordan flashed some super athletic offense before Henley got aggressive, hanging her in the ropes and snapping her neck upward. Fallon kicked Kalani in the gut on a handspring and then hit a tornado-style suplex. She ripped off a turnbuckle pad and hit Kalani with it, all like in one motion, before dropping Jordan snake eye style into the exposed turnbuckle and hitting a shining wizard for the win. So Jordan is in this really interesting part of her career where like she's 75% of the way there on everything, but not 100% of the way there on anything. She's super athletic. She can execute a bunch of stuff, but she doesn't exactly complete her moves, almost like she's worried about hurting the opponent. It's either that or it's a lack of confidence. I don't remember her being like this previously, but while the match started hot with her nailing everything, as it continued, she just didn't get all of her moves. The personality-driven backstage segment before this was actually more of a highlight than the in-ring, which is not usually the case. Fallon was solid across the board, but for me, this heel persona for her, it really feels a bit try-hard. I don't completely buy it with her yet. She might just be a natural babyface. I made this comparison a couple months ago, where I truly believe, and I'm not saying she's this person in terms of the ceiling, because the ceiling is impossible to reach. But she comes across to me almost like a female John Cena from the standpoint of you want to like her, you believe in what she's saying, you believe she believes in what she's saying, and she can go well enough in the ring to garner fan support. But what you don't do with that person is turn them heel. Although, again, this is the Performance Center, it's NXT, it's developmental. The entire point is to try out a bunch of stuff. And since they weren't bringing it up to the main roster, they had to do something with her. At the same time, for me, she's a babyface. It hasn't worked and clicked like it has with Roxanne Perez, like it has with some other people. There were 4 parts of this show where we saw footage from the NXT Women's Combine. Jordan and Thea Hale took an early lead in the speed portion. Jada Parker dominated the second session with Michin also looking strong. Lash Legend obviously impressed during the strength portion, with Izzy Dame also showing out. Last was conditioning, with Ivy Nile winning that. Even though all of this was in kayfabe, it was actually a fun way to pick competitors for qualifying matches, rather than just doing it on a total random basis, like 99% of all wrestling qualification situations, including, by the way, King of the Ring and Queen of the Ring. Ava later announced the 12 of 20 who competed in the Combine, but advanced into this qualification mini tournament, I guess you can call it. They are Sol Ruka, Thea Hale, Jada Parker, Brindley Reese, Michin, Fallon Henley, Lash Legend, Ivy Nile, Izzy Dame, Kalani Jordan, Tatum Paxley, and Ren Sinclair. That was the order that they were listed. Interesting that Sol, Thea, and Jada were clearly the top 3, with Lash all the way down at 7th. I would not have guessed that. Cannot think of anyone in particular that didn't get a chance here. It is interesting that neither Gigi nor JC Jane were part of the process. JC, it does seem, has a broken nose. It's possible she was supposed to be in it and they pulled her from it. But again, you're talking about 2 of the more experienced women on the brand, and for them not to be in this is interesting. Qualifying matches do begin next week. Ridge Holland backstage listened to Thea and supported her, saying he has a daughter and he hopes that she grows up just like Thea. Lexis King popped in, calling Chase you losers, before briefly mentioning Holland's daughter, which of course got him angry. He jumped up out of his seat. So Duke Hudson got in front of it all, and he made a forthcoming challenge. Andre Chase told Ridge that Chase U gets each other's backs. I don't hate the idea of Holland potentially joining Chase U, but it would be random as hell. So we got Hudson and King. This was a surprisingly intense match, with Thea getting in Lexis's face multiple times. King crotch attacked Hudson to the back of the head at one point. Holland ran down with a chair angry at King, but as the referee took it away from Hudson, King caught him with a super kick and the coronation for the win. Obviously, Chase U was upset, and Holland clearly screwed up once again. I've been telling you guys for weeks, I hate this Holland gimmick, but Chase U is kind of getting me interested in him. After all this was over, Jasmine Nix cut a ring camera style promo explaining that JC got her nose broken. She said Thea should be suspended over it, and she'll do everything in her power to make her pay. Then we saw Thea freaking out about Duke's loss when Ridge came in, saying they have every right to be mad at him, but he's just naturally protective of Thea. Hudson said to buy them dinner, and it's even. And Holland's like, all right, I'll do that. That's cool. Then Riley Osborne, the neophyte of this entire group, he had a problem with it, saying a leopard never changes his spots. So Ridge said he would earn all of their trust and respect. Yeah, they somehow got me interested in Ridge Holland. It's pretty crazy. Many of the tag team babyfaces were telling Nathan Frazier and Axiom that they're inspirational as champions. No Quarter Catch Crew came in with the Heritage Cup talking shit, and it got heated. Then the Good Brothers stepped in and offered too sweet, but the champions declined, offending them, and they are now focused on taking their titles. Corny, not totally out of place for NXT, but still definitely very corny. Good Brothers already lost one title opportunity. It's going to be interesting to see if they do get strapped up, but it would have made sense for them to take out the Wolf Dogs, not for Axiom and Frazier to be transitional champions for pretty much no reason whatsoever. So we got Tyson DuPont and Tyreek Igwe against Charlie Dempsey and Miles Bourne. As the match was about to begin, Alicia Taylor announced that the referee was unavailable, with Luca Crucifino nodding at her while standing ringside. Then Stax was announced as the special guest referee. Vic Joseph was then handed a note explaining that Stax had been licensed to officiate, but he was clearly biased with quick counts for the faces and slow as molasses counts on Dempsey after a German suplex bridge, for Dempsey, I should say. That led to a shove from Dempsey and a punch by Stax with a quick 1-2-3 as the Neophytes got their first win. Later backstage, Dempsey said he would grant Tony D'Angelo the Heritage Cup match, but the catch clause gives them the advantage and all the power. Now, NXT ended with D'Angelo family stuffing Damon Kemp and Bourne into their SUV, beating the shit out of them, with Dempsey walking out of NXT, looking around for them, not able to find his teammates. So I'm legitimately surprised that D'Angelo family had not done this like over the last couple of years, the referee deal. It's a really smart way to utilize the gimmick and integrate the larger story into a single show storyline. Not that DuPont and Igwe needed the win, but it was also interesting to see a heel tactic used to help baby faces. I'm not particularly enjoying No Quarter's run with the cup. Maybe this match turns out to be solid. The closing segment, though, was typical D'Angelo family, and the fact that No Quarter was bragging about having the advantage, and the D'Angelos basically took out two of their guys to ensure that that advantage was completely negated, and it would be D'Angelo against Dempsey, which is exactly what he wanted. That was very smart booking and storytelling. And lastly, there was a brief clip of an all-black screen with someone clearly snoring in the background. Folks, it sounds like Wendy Chu is on her way back to NXT. It did sound a little bit more masculine, but that's obviously tough to tell just from a short clip like this. Still, Wendy Chu on her way back, at least one would think.
You rub me just right every week.
Excited about that. You guys know I don't want to say huge Wendy Chu mark, but I love the gimmick. I don't think it would ever work on the main roster, but for NXT, it's absolutely perfect. And just seeing her get back in the ring is great coming out of her knee injury. There was also something that she posted on social media. I did forget to mention this. She talked about gaining an absolute ton of weight, being depressed while injured and so on. She's apparently lost all of it. She feels like she's in great shape and she's coming back to the ring, which is awesome. So that wraps up NXT this week, a super entertaining episode from top to bottom. More from a storytelling standpoint, less from an in-ring wrestling standpoint. It was one of their weaker in-ring episodes of late, but a bounce back, I think for the second straight week, I said, coming out of a couple real rough episodes in April that I just wasn't loving coming out of WrestleMania weekend. So with that, let's move over to AEW. Interesting, there were only 5 matches on Dynamite this week, one of which was a total squash. That number not only seemed low, but when you have that few matches, my expectation was that all of them would be storyline driven. Unfortunately, that was not the case. 3 of 5 had storyline build. That's 60%. So even in a week where AEW only put on 2 hours of TV, and that 2 hours was their signature show, nearly half of the matches on that show just happened. I'd probably have been more frustrated watching the overall show live, but because I got to watch my Knicks beat the Pacers and I had this on DVR, it went by pretty smoothly, but still, there were issues on the show. We're going to start talking about the overarching storyline for Dynamite, and then we'll get into some of the individual segments. So overall, the concept of who is running AEW TV was convoluted as hell Wednesday. Dynamite opened with Adam Copeland saying Tony Khan granted him a no disqualification stipulation for his match. Then seconds later, we saw the elite version of the Dynamite intro package. Then, during the opening match, Tony Schiavone explained the wrestling has been seized by the elite, but Khan is still running the business. Except, again, just to repeat, we were told in the cold open that Khan literally made a wrestling match decision. And we were told later in the show by a completely different person that Khan booked their match and stipulation as well. Later in the show, we saw the elite take Tony's parking spot. It was super corny and really unfunny. Then we saw Jack Perry last week after Dynamite throwing water in his own face while fully dressed. He said Kenny Omega was a coward, not a hero like they needed, and neither the Elite nor AEW needs him anymore. They would change the world without him. Then we saw Omega from a hospital bed, reminding that he has EVP powers. So he set Anarchy in the Arena for the 5-year anniversary of Dynamite, the Elite against Team AEW, FTR, and 2 opponents to be named. Okay, so now, after spending the first 30 minutes of the show telling us the Elite have taken over booking, despite Khan being able to add a stipulation to a match, we have Omega also booking, but not for that week's show, multiple weeks in advance, a match involving other EVPs who supposedly have booking power. And if Tony Khan can do all of this, what was stopping Tony from booking this Anarchy in the Arena match? Why did he need Omega to do it? It's not like the Elite usurped his power. Also, last week, you'll remember they cut his satellite feed. Are we supposed to believe that a billionaire was not able to get the satellite feed up 1 week later when he's still working from Jacksonville? Like, what are we doing here? The whole Team AEW thing, that was an eye roll, but I guess you got to call it something. The creative, though, is a real problem here, as I just outlined. So then later, we got a purposefully cheesy promo video with the Young Bucks enjoying it from their seats on gorilla position. This was actually fun. It was like some corporate PR bullshit that they made for themselves. Then after the main event match, the Elite came out with the Bucks saying they got an overrun. And the thing went like 11 minutes after the show. I don't know what the hell they're doing anymore. Kazuchika Okada told Omega, get well soon. Matt Jackson said he wished Tony got out of his own way and realized they were trying to make AEW a better place, giving them no choice but to take him out. Then he blamed Omega for ending their friendship, and they apparently had no problem with the Anarchy in the Arena booking because they spoke about it like it was a match they made and they just went along with the idea. FTR came out saying they found partners, leading to Eddie Kingston entering like a rabid dog, followed by Bryan Danielson to easily the biggest pop of the entire night. Shivani then announced he's on a text chain with Khan and Omega, and Danielson is not only cleared, he's going to compete on Saturday. Then all 8 guys brawled and got separated as Dynamite ended. Now look, as always, once this match actually transpires, it's going to bang. Lots of great wrestlers. Perry will go through real glass. Okada's going to have really a lot of fun, I would guess, doing his first match of this kind in his career. Danielson's going to blade. He's going to murder the Young Bucks. It's going to be a blast. But you cannot sit here and tell me this shit makes any sense based on everything I've laid out for you. I mean, Team AEW, the members of it, that makes sense just from an interwoven booking standpoint. And I like Bryan and Eddie teaming after gaining mutual respect for one another. Though it wouldn't have hurt if they put an original AEW roster member on this team, because it is, again, Team AEW. I wonder what they have planned for Hangman Page, because he would have made a lot of sense as like Omega's representative in the match, because don't forget, he was suspended from the Elite and should want revenge. Though, again, it's possible they suspended him from the Elite because they're going to bring him back as part of that as a heel. We'll have to see. But again, on this single episode, they told us Tony, Kenny, and the Bucks were all booking the show. Yet the Bucks had no problem with Kenny's booking. Tony is supposed to be marginalized by not being present, yet he's still making decisions. It just does not add up at all. The only instance where that played was something that happened later with Christian Cage. But even in that situation, it's not like he needed the Bucks for what he did. Beyond that, look, I know the Bucks are supposed to be smarmy, shit-eating heels in their promos, but the way they're speaking and acting, it almost comes across as parody. It's tough to buy into this and believe that they have legitimate animus when they talk and act the way they do. And don't forget, I was positive about this coming after the initial turn at Daly's place, and I liked how the Bucks affected Dynamite the following week. But the inconsistency here for me is just way too much. They got to figure this shit out, because I cannot watch a show and be told 3 different things all in a single episode. Let's move to the TNT Championship, which was the main event. Adam Copeland defending against Brody King in a no disqualification match. Backstage to open Dynamite, Copeland explained that Khan granted him the stipulation. Malachi Black later cut a promo in his typical style, saying Copeland faced his own mortality, so he turned to the sun with his wife and kids. That left it up to Black to kill the facade and prove to the world that he's a vile, cold-hearted, evil son of a bitch, which he could only accomplish by bringing him close to the brink of death. This was probably the most extensive and logical thing Malachi has said in quite some time. It was really solid overall. And I like the feud overall. Copeland hit the Impaler DDT on a chair placed on the ring apron, so King blatantly and excessively bladed, Crimson Mask in seconds, dropping and dripping all over the ring. It was profusive. Copeland got run into a chair, and during commercial, a table was set up ringside. King did a cannonball and caught a spear for a half tilt power driver. It kind of looked like shit. Copeland did a Death Valley driver on the apron that looked really good, and then a tope spear through the table. Then he hit a spear in the ring to retain the title. King, of course, rose before Cope, and he attacked him because this is AEW. Kyle O'Reilly saved. The Faces took King out 2-on-1. Cope thanked O'Reilly later backstage, so Kyle asked for a title match in his hometown as a thank you. Cope called him out on that being his plan from the start, but he liked it, and he accepted the title match. Nothing for Malachi or the rest of House of Black. The excessive blood was unnecessary for me. Other than that, the work was really strong bell to bell. It was easily, by a huge margin, the best match on the show, and if you combine NXT and AEW, the best match across both shows. I went 3.75 stars B+, borderline A-. The stuff with O'Reilly, whatever. He's clearly not winning the match with Malachi out there, waiting for a title opportunity, which you assume is going to come at Double or Nothing. Swerve Strickland and Christian Cage had a face-to-face. There was an on-screen countdown to this, like those Cody Rhodes countdowns on Raw a few years ago. Swerve came out on his own, making a hometown hockey reference that got a pop, so Christian, with the patriarchy all out, took the other side of the hockey gimmick and got booed. Fans were mostly chanting, "Let's go Oilers," for a good bit. Christian eventually threatened to take Swerve's gold teeth, just like he took one of his dreads. So Mogul Embassy said, without Prince Nana, he was injured last week, you'll remember, they popped in the ring around Swerve with commentary saying no one could have expected this. Except this is literally what we and everyone talked about last week. It was the single most expected thing that could have happened. Mogul Embassy getting his back because he's in a faction and he's being attacked by a faction. So why wouldn't his faction help him? Swerve made topical Kendrick Lamar Drake cuts, and he dared Christian to take his teeth and title, saying he doubted he would because Christian says, "I quit," when faced with difficult situations. Just as it looked like Swerve won the verbal battle, and he did, Mogul Embassy attacked him from behind. Swerve took a toss powerbomb. Referees tried to save, but got thwarted. Then Brian Cage threw Swerve out of the ring, and Swerve kind of gently got tossed off the steel steps through the announce table. I'm not really sure how else to describe what happened there. He was completely laid out, though. The Bucks clapped for Christian, pleased with what they saw, as all agreed it was the start of a strong working relationship. And I was left wondering, is Jack okay with all of this, given, the multi-year storyline and how they absolutely loathe each other? Like, isn't that a little bit of a plot hole here? But this, Tony Schiavone, was unexpected. Mogul Embassy turning on Swerve. I guess the rationale behind this is that Swerve found all of his success without them. He left them behind as he rose to become the world champion. So they're angry about that. They're also angry about being called to help him now that he finally needed something. Nana being absent and previously by Swerve's side and not as much by their side probably will help that along. Logically, this makes total sense. The question is whether they're going to let Cage cut a promo to explain this and whether he's going to get a title match out of it. I'm not sure about that. At the same time, I'm really not sure what benefit is to be gained from this. Certainly not the Swerve-Brian Cage feud. Sure, this is going to help Swerve get some sympathy, but he has still yet to take a single step that actually makes him a babyface. Saving other baby faces would be the best outlet to try to do that, but they've refused to put that into his storytelling. You have this anarchy in the arena match. You have Swerve talking a ton of shit about the Young Bucks. Him getting Team AEW's back would have been a babyface move. I'm not saying that you shouldn't give him a title match and you should have put in that instead. I'm just giving you an example of the way this could have been accomplished. Why Khan is trying to push Swerve as a full babyface instead of an anti-hero or a tweener is mind-boggling when, again, he has not done a single thing that tells us as a viewer that he's a face. He gets cheered because people appreciate him, and now maybe they'll feel a little bit of sympathy. But he has done absolutely nothing to earn it. And when you want and try to develop a super over babyface, you need to give fans reason to want to see him win, not just want to see him on their screen wrestling. That is a totally different concept. And when it comes to Swerve, they're not accomplishing it right now because he's stuck in this really weird role where he never atoned for his sins and he's never done anything good. Let's move on. Orange Cassidy fought Trent Beretta. This opened the show. They quickly went into the crowd. Then Don Callis walked out to booze and jumped on commentary for the remainder of the show. Orange took a half-and-half suplex and 2 pile drivers. Trent ripped off a turnbuckle pad and got caught by the referee. That led to an argument. So Orange ripped off a different turnbuckle pad behind the referee's back, threw Trent into it, and got a roll up 1-2-3. Beretta immediately popped up after, so apparently the turnbuckle was enough for a 3 count, but not enough to put him down even a second beyond that. Callis applauded Cassidy after. Beretta attacked him ringside, seething from the loss, the pile driver into the steps, and a catapult into the ring frame. Trent then grabbed a toolbox, and Orange took a chair, so Callis got between them, checking on Orange, and then Chris Statlander ran out, yelling at Trent. Good note by commentary during this part. They pointed out Trent did not attempt a pinfall once the entire match because the focus was not winning the match, it was beating Orange. That was really good. Super lackluster match just because it was a blood feud before the bell even rang, and to get what we got didn't make you feel like that. Obviously, the point was to save the bigger spots for the rematch, likely with a significant stipulation. I could see this happening at Double or Nothing, maybe the go-home Dynamite before that. The post-match was far better than what we got in the ring, and that was really the point. Similar to what happened with the Intercontinental title feud on Raw this past Monday night, they just did the match to kind of set up the angle, and that's okay sometimes. It was just odd to do this as the opening match. Better to do it in the middle of the show. And with the Callis deal, I still remain interested in that. I presume it's going to lead to Trent joining the family with them getting one over on Orange, but we'll have to see what happens. Rocky Romero checked in on Orange backstage, saying he spoke to Khan, who said if he beats Jay White in his scheduled match later, that they can get a trios title match with a partner of their choosing, maybe even Trent. Now, why he would suggest that, doesn't make a shred of logical sense. This was booked, this match, for literally no reason initially. And the fact that you're going to have a random match lead to a trios match potentially, it's weak as hell beyond the lack of story entering it in the first place. Pac was later cutting a promo backstage when Bang Bang Gang interrupted, talking shit about White taking down Okada in the past and Pac failing to do so. One of White's better promos recently, and a fun, intense interaction between both guys. So we had Romero against White. Positive adjustment here had Bang Bang Gang come out with the black AEW Trios titles, but they were still carrying the pink ones as well for some reason. It was later explained the black Trios titles are the unified titles. So they're doing the Roman Reigns where he carried 3 titles simultaneously despite them only actually being one, except that only lasted 1 or 2 weeks and those other titles went away. So let's just hope that happens here as well. Rocky got a super close near fall on a backslide, but Jay won rather easily after that with Blade Runner. Then Pac ran out to threaten them and nothing else happened. I don't understand why Rocky Romero is getting so much TV time. I don't dislike him. I think he's good for the industry. Apparently he's now a vice president or an executive of some kind in AEW and New Japan simultaneously. Great for him. I don't know why he's getting major TV matches on a consistent basis. Doesn't really make sense. Serena Deeb did an onstage interview, trying but failing to show personality as a means of getting cheers. She stumbled around talking about her extended absence and having seizures, saying the vision of becoming women's champion got her through all the confusion and uncertainty. Tony Storm interrupted, throwing $2 at Deeb and calling her a charity case. Deeb got angry, demanding she take it seriously. Storm said she doesn't give a shit. Literally, that's what she said. Then they did a face-off and Serena socked her in the face. Look, even the worst people at promos need to talk somewhat if they're going to build a pay-per-view title match. So Deeb did okay for herself, even if she kept looking back to the crowd for approval. That was really weird. But she's not good at this, and she was out there for way too long. An on-stage interview standing by herself was not the best way to accomplish this goal, especially given it's her greatest flaw. Pre-taped interview or a promo package with Storm interrupting would have been far better. Trying not to be too harsh, but outside of, oh my God, one of the women said shit, it was quite flat and uneventful.
Yeah, all your sports teams, they're all failures.
Harley Cameron fought Mariah May. This was Harley's first TV match. Interestingly, she wore more clothes wrestling than she does in her other segments. The match was absolutely nothing, but credit to Harley for bumping her ass off in some spots. She really helped Mariah look good. Pleasantly surprised after I was super pessimistic about this last week. May hit a missile dropkick, but Saraya saved Cameron from hip attack, only to get punched in the face with Harley eating Mayday in the finish. Saraya attacked after the bell because this is AEW. So Mina Sharakara saved when Tony did not. They almost kissed again, but again did not. They celebrated with champagne. It's kind of strange how Mariah has 2 friends that don't interact with one another and have absolutely nothing to do with each other. Also, Saraya hasn't wrestled a match in 3 months, so maybe that's coming. Tag Team Showdown, something like that. Willow Nightingale did a backstage interview wondering whether Mercedes Moné is ready for her and their match at Double or Nothing, especially given Mercedes has been out for a year while she's won multiple titles and is on the run of her entire career. Willow is a 10 times better promo than Mercedes. And every time I see her on screen, I just want more, be it talking, wrestling, whatever. She is an immensely natural and believable babyface who can go in the ring and has a shit ton of personality and acting ability. It's to the point where Willow is probably one of my favorite parts of watching AEW weekly because she almost never disappoints me. She's completely carrying this feud, and though it's unlikely, I kind of hope she retains the TBS title and her push. Mercedes later got her own backstage interview saying she's excited to be this close to her return. She dropped the "We're the best wrestled" tagline, bragged about sitting courtside for the Celtics and throwing out the first pitch for the Red Sox coming up. She reiterated that she would be ready for Double or Nothing. Mercedes said Willow stole a year of her career, but she's back with a vengeance because she's that bitch, and she'll wipe the smile off Willow's face. The fact that Willow outclassed Mercedes by a mile in these interviews is not lost on me and should not be lost on you either. Monet was rough and repetitive as hell here. The whole promo was overacted. Also not lost on me is that she used Jade Cargill's old tagline for no reason whatsoever. This was scripted as fuck and immensely lame. The match cannot come soon enough because everything else around Mercedes has been disappointing since her AEW debut. I'm not looking forward to her beating Willow. I hope there's a swerve of some kind by the time that match comes around. I don't see it being the case. But if you asked me, you put these two women next to each other, listen to them cut promos, and obviously watching Willow wrestle recently, we haven't been able to say Mercedes do that. Who's the bigger star? Who's the chance to be a bigger star? The answer is Willow. I hate to say it, but that's the truth right now. Samoa Joe got a promo package that showed him training while talking about doing what it takes to be a warrior. Pretty good. I would have much preferred it as a regular promo. Joe doesn't need the theatrics. He just needs to talk into a mic and look straight into a camera. So I thought the whole training montage didn't really fit him. It's not what I want to see from Samoa Joe. Chris Jericho and Big Bill ran through a couple jobbers with Judas Effect ending it. Jericho doing all the work was the gimmick. Chris mistook Edmonton for Calgary, getting jeers. And I noticed that he added the Learning Tree Chris Jericho as an emblem on the FTW title, which was kind of funny. He mentioned cage match ratings and the 79 chops from the Katsuyori Shibata match. That got a laugh out of me. Shivani then entered the ring to inform Jericho that Hook will be back next week. I still don't understand why this guy is wearing a maroon blazer and gray pants. Like, does he purposely want to look like he's from an era of wrestling 50 years ago? Modern this guy up and make him look like he's in the 2020s at this point. I get there's the nostalgia aspect of it, but he looks like absolute shit, and all it takes is a better suit for him to look better. Anyway, that was pretty much all that happened here. Believe I was ahead of the curve telling you that this gimmick would work. That continues to be the case. I see people are coming around to it. I like the Learning Tree, the Jericho Vortex, what they're doing. I understand some of you are tired of Jericho on your TV. I felt that way as well recently. As soon as he started doing this gimmick, though, I came around, which always seems to be the case with Jericho, constantly reinventing himself and doing it sometimes directly against the grain. In this case, going with the flow. And that's pretty cool to see. So, folks, that wraps up AEW this week. Really an unremarkable edition of Dynamite, particularly because they had the entire week to focus just on this episode. And to do that and still not be able to knock it out of the park, especially from a logic standpoint, when it came to what we talked about earlier with the EVPs and Tony Khan, it's just immensely frustrating to tune into a show and be like, wait, this doesn't match with this, and this doesn't match with this. And most of that was in the first 30 minutes of the program. So, of course, we will see what this does from a rating standpoint. We're not going to talk about ratings here every week. Again, just kind of curious over this short stretch of time to see what does happen with Dynamite while it continues to go head-to-head with major playoff games. Let's not forget that. That is important. All of wrestling right now. Raw, NXT, Dynamite, and SmackDown during the week going head-to-head with two sets of playoffs. Collision getting moved around and Rampage as well because of playoffs, sometimes canceled entirely. So it's a really odd stretch for wrestling. And WWE has it especially rough right now because, actually, I shouldn't say WWE, the three major shows, Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown have it incredibly rough right now. Each of them went up against the Knicks game this week, which is among the higher rated playoff games so far because they're one of the most popular teams in the entire country. So we'll see what happens with the rating. I don't expect it to be quite high, quite low, anything like that. Probably non-starter from a conversation standpoint. And if so, great. Then we don't even have to talk about it next week. So that's it, folks. We're wrapping up this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. We will be back on Tuesday with your next WWE episode. As mentioned, we're going to do a special giveaway next week. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at Getting Overcast. Make sure you're listening to the entire show and not skipping any parts. You need clues. You're going to need a lot of stuff to win these giveaways, but I do think the items are pretty damn cool. On the way out, allow me to hit you with a few reminders. First, that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
It's all about Defy.
So head on over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Again, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. You can send in questions and comments via Twitter at Getting Overcast. You can also do so via email, gettingoverpod@gmail.com. And please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well, because for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get bonus audio, instant reactions to Raw, NXT, Dynamite, and SmackDown every week. Those are called the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling. You also get exclusive news posts on Friday. Again, buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Tons of major shows are coming up here. Getting Over will be around to cover them all. Our 600th episode is coming up not too far away from that. Excited to be back with you next week. WWE on Tuesday, NXT and AEW on Thursday. But it is officially time for the Silver King to sign off and leave you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.